loud. Here we go. All right, so let's turn it over to Mr. Jim Zelem. He's going to be talking on the real root cause, cultural leadership, and the culture of change. And I think you'll find it very exciting. So I'm going to turn it over to you right now, and I am going to mute myself.
You have to share the screen
You're right. Hang on. I have to stop sharing is what I've got to do. Hang on.
and let me share.
You got it, bro. Here we go. Okay, give me one sec.
Yep.
So Olivia, this is where I get confused. You're gonna have to walk me through this. I go down to the share, which is a new setup, and you have to go to what?
The
Host tools
that
for
little
share.
arrow. So what are you trying? You have to.
There it is. Host tools to share is the new way to do it. So I just fixed it. I think you're in like Flynn, Mr. Jim.
You should be good because I just tried sharing my screen and I can't.
Okay, good.
Well, now I'm a little lost. We did it the other day, and
Yeah,
You're
down at
I
the
gonna go
did.
to
bottom.
the bottom of the screen.
Yeah,
It's gonna. There's gonna be the chat, the React, and then share and
yeah.
more. You're gonna
You're
hit
gonna click
share.
share. Now,
Okay. I got to figure out what screen I'm actually sharing. It's
and we
that one
do
because
we do a
because
dry run 2 days before, so
yeah.
that helps. Luckily, thank goodness.
All right. So everyone see that now the slide presentation.
Not yet, but
No.
No.
when we did this on Monday, it was also delayed. But double click it.
Well, I have to end the slideshow here now, and I'm going to go back to
Sharing. Yeah, go back
well,
to share.
I'm in here and I'm sharing and hold control to select I'm not selecting multiple windows.
Yeah, you don't
So
want to do that.
no.
Just do like you did on Monday. We should be good. There you go, bro.
You're there.
All
You're good.
right. All right. So now let me so now you see the slideshow, correct?
I see channel content.
Now I see your YouTube studio.
Well,
See?
no, I put the
It's all right. Move it to the other
so
monitor.
wait a minute now. Okay, so let me
And we're not
minimize.
behind because we finished the business stuff ahead of time. So it's still
Yeah. Well,
6:15, so you're
what's
good.
bothering me is
Excitement. So whatever screen you're doing for the YouTube studio, you want to move your slideshow over to that monitor.
well, it should be now. I
You could be sharing it by application, right? So there you go.
There you go.
Perfect. A plus, bro.
okay. So
See, you're all set, my friend. I'm going to mute myself and let you rock and roll.
yeah, I just want to. Well, now where the heck did my notes pop go to? I just had them a minute ago.
See, that's the problem with today's multi-monitor
I
day
did
and
have
age.
them.
Oh, I saw him the other day too. It's
Yeah.
it's on hiding on one of your monitors, I bet.
Okay. I think it's on my monitor now. Okay. So
There you go.
I just want to talk about a little bit in here. Many organizations struggle because they lack the tools, and they might struggle because improvements don't stick. And that's really what I want to talk about today. Okay. Um, I don't really want to talk about better tools because everybody has better tools. There's AI out there. There's so much out there that people use, and I know everybody's using them. But what I've learned over time through both success and probably more failure is that sustainable improvements follows a sequence. Okay. So let me give you just a little bit about my background in here. I am My degree is in electrical engineering, but I dominantly stayed in management my whole life. Okay, I stayed in a lot of electronic assembly, and believe it or not, years ago worked for a publishing company, and they hired me for something of microfilm, and I said, well, I know nothing about microfilm, and but it was all my quality that they really wanted me to do and work. So I went there and we were working things. And so I just climbed the ladder of success in management. And, I started teaching leadership. And more and more, I read a lot about leadership, but it was more about the failures of leadership that got me to understand how to get sustainable change. Okay. Because we were doing the right things, but we weren't, everything wasn't staying there. Okay. So I want you to understand that leadership drives culture. Okay. And culture determines whether prevention is even possible. Okay. It's kind of like leadership drives culture, culture drives sustainable change. Okay. So, and if that sequence is out of order, even the best tools won't sustain results. Okay. So, so, um, so I'm sure a lot of you have done root cause analysis. You kind of like solve problems. Okay. You've improved processes. But let me ask you a simple question. Why do some solved problems always come back? Could be 6 months later, same issue, same conversation. And even then, sometimes the same corrective action. You close it, you document it, you move on, okay? And and then it shows up again. This isn't because the tools are wrong. The tools work, but the tools solve the problems. They don't solve sustained behavior. And that's with the people. So the real question is, what's driving the behavior that keeps bringing the problems back? So what you already do well. Everybody does root cause analysis. I mean, a lot of people do data-driven decisions, which is great. They do process improvements. They do continuous improvements. You're committed to continuous improvements, and that's not easy work, and it's not common in a lot of organizations. So this isn't about a conversation about lack of capability. The question is, if all this is in place, why do the results still not stick? And that happened to me quite a bit in my career. And as we go through, you'll understand what I'm saying in here and how it really the improvements in my career was really not through me, it was through the people that got me there. Okay. So the reality is you have reoccurring issues. Okay.
Let
There's
me know if you
fatigue.
want to talk.
What? Did someone say something?
Somebody unmuted by accident, but I think they're muted now.
Okay. Okay. So we know how to solve problems, and yet what still is happening? Problems come back. Initiatives are strong and they fade. Fixes get put into place, but they don't stay sustained. And over time, people drift back to the old habits. And I have seen that many a times. It's almost like you got to be a disciplinary and get them out of the bad habits, but that's like doing the wrong thing. But so something underneath hasn't changed. So now we've got a gap between what we know how to do and what actually sticks. And here's where most organizations live. So if the tools are working, what's really causing the results to fall apart over time? And I'm sure many of you have seen it, um, at where you work. So if we got reoccurring issues, things not sustaining, you know, people going back to bad habits, at some point, we have to step back and ask, is this really a tool problem? I don't believe it. Okay. Um, it's a foundation problem. The tools work, but they're being applied in an environment that doesn't support those results. Okay. So it's not a failure of method. Again, it's a failure of what's underneath the method. And that's where leadership and culture comes in. So where root cause stops? So if this is a foundation problem, then we have to ask a different kind of question. Because most of the time, when we do root cause analysis, we're looking inside the process. We look at the variations, we look at the flow, we look at breakdown points. But what if the real root cause isn't the process? Okay. Not because the process doesn't matter, but because something else is influencing the process is actually being executed. Something that doesn't show up in a flow chart, okay, or a fishbone diagram, but it shows up every single day in behavior. So if the real cause isn't always in the process, then where is it? In my experience, it shows up in places like this: fear of speaking up. People, have you ever gone to a meeting and the people don't want to talk up? And when they don't want to talk up, some people say, "Well, that's agreement." No, that's not agreement. That's fear of speaking up. They don't want to talk to you. That's a trust issue. Okay. Not, and they don't want to talk to you, not because they don't care, but because they don't feel safe saying it. Or leadership, or again, if they say something, well, then leadership is going to react. And the first thing a lot of times what leadership does is, well, who caused it? Why do we care who caused it? Okay. And again, that's a blame game. And I don't really want to play the blame game here. I want to come back and say, okay, let's get away from pointing fingers and let's find out where the problem is. Okay. Or are we having conflicting incentives? Okay. Because let's go back in here, you have lack of trust. So if you have lack of trust, would you speak up to somebody you don't trust? I wouldn't. Okay. And to get trust is pretty hard, okay? Because it's two-way street because trust is a feeling. If you don't feel you can trust your leader, then it's not going to happen, okay? S- Um, so this happens every day in behavior. And it's like what leadership does is, well, it's what are you incentivizing, but it's not what you say. It's what you do. You can say everything you want, but people, the old saying is if you really want to understand somebody, don't listen to their words. Okay. Watch their actions. Their actions will really tell you what's going on. So, the real root cause in a lot of these things, now I'm not saying in everything, but what I have learned a lot is these hidden factors are influencing behavior. Okay. So we have to step back and ask at the end of the day, behavior drives results. What people actually do is what produces the outcome. So the next question is, what drives behavior? Well, culture drives behavior, okay? The environment, the expectations, what's enforced, what isn't enforced, okay? So you can come back and say, yeah, we're doing this, but if you keep, as a leader, if you keep pushing schedule, that's your culture you're creating. And if you keep coming back and saying, well, we got to fix this and move it back, what you're promoting is a culture of correction, not to fix anything. You just got to get the schedule out. And people will act by what their leaders tell them to do. So, who's doing that? It's the leadership. Leadership actually drives culture. Okay, so I'm working backwards from the sustainable change. I'm working back, it's the culture. Okay, and somebody said, well, the culture is bad in this place. Well, why is the culture bad in this place? And truthfully, if you're aware, what is your culture? Okay. So leadership is going to drive that culture. Culture is going to drive the behavior, and behavior drives the results. So if you don't have the results, okay, we can't just fix the process. We have to go upstream because is your culture doing that? What's driving the behavior or what's going on? So now is so if leadership drives culture and culture drives behavior, okay, and behavior drives results, then sustainable improvement has to follow the same sequence. And that's what I really call, the Zelem trilogy. The leadership drives the culture, and the culture determines whether prevention is even possible. So it's leadership to culture to prevention. And most organizations jump straight to this part. They want fewer problems, fewer defects, better outcomes. But they skip the part that makes it possible. Leadership and culture, okay? If you have the right leadership and you're leading the team correctly and you work with the team, as a leader, you don't have to have all the answers. You have to know where to find the answers, okay? But your job, I mean, when you're in a leadership, those people are an extension of your hands. And I think a lot of times with all this technology that's coming up in the world, and I'm not knocking it because I'm for a lot of things, okay? I mean, I believe AI is a phenomenal tool. I do not think it's a great master, it's a great slave, okay? Um, but so you have to wonder what's doing it, and you have to believe in your people, okay? So, um, so if leadership is where everything starts, okay, then I guess my next question is, what does leadership actually do? So, kind of like in my experience, leadership comes down to like three things. What leaders model. People don't do what leaders say. They do what leaders do. And I'm going back in my earlier career as even when I was the VP of manufacturing and everything like that. If I would go in, I would have weekly meetings and everything with the staff. And whatever I brought up, that's what they would concentrate on. So if I came back and said, we got to look at this, and this, that's what they would do. Okay. So if a leader says quality matters, but cuts corners under pressure because we got to get the schedule out, what are you telling your team? Okay. And number two is what leaders tolerate. Anything a leader allows eventually becomes the standard. So if a poor behavior is ignored, it gets repeated. And let's face it, how many times, everybody will say, well, there's a favor here or there and everything like that. But again, you have to be equal across the board, okay, to everybody. So if you come back and you reward firefighting, all the corrective action, well, you'll get more firefighting because that's what you're rewarding. Okay. If you recognize prevention, okay, you'll start seeing more of it. But prevention is really it's not too good looking, okay, because you don't really there's no wow factor, okay? Nothing automatically appears like, oh, hey, look at that. I fixed this problem, it's gone. Prevention doesn't do that. There's no wow factor with prevention, but prevention really will stop things from happening, okay? So leadership isn't just direction, it's modeling, tolerating, and reinforcing. And that's what actually shapes culture, okay? So that brings us to the next part of culture, okay? So if the leadership shapes behavior, then what does that create over time? It creates a culture, okay? Culture is simple. What people do when no one is watching. Okay. I mean, I'll give you a prime example. Like how many times, well, this goes back, maybe none of you have had this, but you know what? You have a big customer coming in. Oh, we got to clean up the place. So what culture did you say? Well, we don't have to keep the place clean until we get a big customer coming in. But if you keep the place clean all the time, why do you care if a big customer comes in? Okay. And culture is simple. What people do when no one is watching, and it's culture is not what's written on the wall. It's not what's in your policy, but what actually happens day to day when pressure shows up. Okay. When no one is looking. And do people speak up or do they stay quiet? Do they fix the root cause or do they apply a quick fix? Because you got to understand people are very, very innovative. Okay. They all have their workarounds. And I don't care what system you have. I don't care, it's computer systems and everything. When a problem comes by, they know the workarounds better than you because truthfully, in a management role, you live with the results. They live with the problems. So if you want to really understand the problems, go talk to them. They'll tell you what's going on. So culture isn't something you announce. Okay, it's something you create over time. And it takes time to do it. I mean, this is not a, thing like, fixing a problem. It takes time because people do not trust you. And even when I went into new places, yeah, I'm going to, I go back and I was going to do this, this, and this. And how many times did they say, well, you're about the third person that came in to try to say you are going to do this and you didn't do it. Okay. So, um, so if culture drives behavior, all right, then what kind of culture actually allows prevention to happen? Okay. Because prevention isn't something you install. It's something that takes time or over time. Okay. It's like, you know, you're not going to be a great golfer if you golf the first time. Well, some people are. I had to take a lot of lessons. Okay. So it's something that emerges when the environment supports it, but it starts with trust. And if people do not trust leadership, they won't take the risk and they won't speak up. Okay. And they definitely won't think ahead. Okay. Then ownership. Do people feel responsible for improving the process or do they just follow it? Are they psychologically safe? Can people raise issues without fear of blame? Because a lot of times it comes back to a blame, and you really shouldn't, when people speak up, you really want to find the problem, not the person. Now, I'm not saying it might not be a person, it can be. From my standpoint in my career, I found out that before I really attack a person, I would attack everything else and make sure when I'm going to talk to somebody, it's the person. Okay. So, and a lot of times, if they don't feel like they can speak up, when problems will stay hidden until they become bigger problems. And that's when, probably supervisors, managers, leaders, they'll start diving into it. But I'm telling you now, there's a lot of knowledge out on the floor and your staff because I've known what I've done and I've known some other people that I mentored and they have done pretty good when they started working with the people. So prevention requires people to look upstream and not just react kind of like downstream. Okay. So I just want you to know prevention isn't a tool. Okay. Prevention is a behavior. And that's why a lot of companies say we're going to prevent, but they don't. Okay. And if you really look at ISO 9000, ISO 9000 is an old one, but ISO 9000 has corrective action and they do good. But what they do is they fix the problems, but they don't really prevent. Okay. So when prevention isn't a tool, it's a behavior. And that behavior only shows up when the culture supports it. That kind of means you can't demand prevention from a culture built on correction. If your culture is built on correction, there is no way you're going to put prevention on there. Okay. You have to go back to where it starts. And again, it's leadership. So when prevention isn't present, organizations naturally fall into a different pattern. And I'm going to call that the correction loop. Problem shows up, we fix it, and then it comes back, and then we fix it, and it's kind of like a repeat cycle, okay? And I'm not telling you they repeat very quickly. You can probably do some things, but they will come back, and you figure, well, gee, I thought I did this. We did root cause analysis, but something went on. So you kind of like get the same outcome over and over again. And every time it kind of like happens, we spend time, we spend resources, we get frustrated, but nothing fundamentally changes because we're addressing sometimes the symptoms, not what's driving it. Okay. And that's what organizations get stuck in correction mode. So the question is, what does a prevention based system look like instead? Well, so if that's the correction loop, what does like the prevention look like? It looks very different. It starts with trust. Okay. If the people trust leadership, they speak up early. They share concerns. They don't wait until problems escalate. That creates engagement. Now, the staff is involved or the team, not just doing the work, but improving the work. They feel part of the team. And that leads to prevention. You can't start prevention without getting the team involved because now people are thinking ahead. They're identifying issues. They in turn address some root causes, and they will bring it up to you if they if they talk to you, and that leads to sustainability because now the behavior has changed, not just the process. So instead of problem, fix, repeat, you get trust, engagement, prevention, sustainment. That's the difference between fixing problems and preventing them. And that loop doesn't start with tools, it starts with leadership. Okay. And again, I want to come back and tell you trust, if you're building this thing, trust is the foundation. Okay. Leadership is going to set the direction and the culture is going to carry it forward. All right. So I'm going to give you a couple real world stories that happened to me. All right. So I had a problem that needed to be resolved, and I'm an engineer, so I love to find out root causes. I do, okay, and but I didn't have the time no more, so I asked these two individuals to work on this problem, and we talked and everything, and so I said, come back with some ideas, and we'll talk about it, and we'll see what we can do. So they came back a couple days later. They had an idea. And what did I do? I kind of like shut them down. I said, well, I did that test already and we didn't get good results. So I said, try something else. That happened two or three more times because I was doing it, but I had no more time to do it. So I asked them to do it. But now you kind of almost said, well, you know, you could see them slowly like, why am I doing this? Jim has the answers. Why are we even coming up to him and saying anything to him? All right. So what I did was they came up with another suggestion and I did it again. But I said, well, I'm not going to tell them I did it. Okay. I said, well, that sounds like a great idea. Go do it. And I already knew the results. And they came back a couple days later after they did the test. And it was the results that I knew would happen because I tested it already. And I said, oh, wow, I'm surprised that didn't work. So now I started getting them more uh, involved. They felt like they were doing something. And believe it or not, those two people fixed a problem that I could not have fixed without them. All right. I worked for another company. Uh, we assembled clocks for the Honda Accord. This is going back a few years ago. And we were doing more of a push system than a pull system. And and I was the business unit manager. And there was a industrial engineer came by, and he redesigned the line. And and his name was Mark, and he did a fabulous job. I mean, he really, really did. And we had to make 1,200 clocks a day. And we even after he did it, okay, we weren't getting 1,200 clocks a day. We were getting close, but we were still working overtime to get those 1,200 clocks a day out. Okay. And what happened was there was always variances between parts and everything. So he would go out there in the morning, he'd see the bottleneck and he'd say, okay, you do this, you do this, you do this. And we had, I think it was like 12 to 15 people on this line. All he did was move the bottleneck. That's all he did. Okay. And so I knew this team very well. We talked, I trusted him. We built a relationship up to him. So one day they came up to me and they said, we can do it. We just want to, tweak it this way, that way, and this way. And believe it or not, I said, well, talk to Mark. They said we have, and he won't listen to us. So I took it upon myself because I trusted this team. And boy, did this pay kudos. So I said to him, look, all right, tomorrow morning, they started at 7. I said, so from 7 to 11, nobody will bother you. I will keep Mark away. Okay. I says, you can move whoever does what, but you can't change the process. You can change who does what, but you can't change what's being done. And they agreed. And I said, so by 11 o'clock, let's see how you do and let's see how many clocks we get. Well, in the 4 hours, they beat their uh, quantity of 600. I think they had a point to prove. Okay. And Mark came out during it, and I said, Mark, just leave him alone. And he stormed out. I said, Mark, just leave him alone. I'm trying something. Okay. And though that team did the clocks, quality, 600, and everything. Okay. And I even tried to tell Mark, as an engineer, you came up with a marvelous system. Okay. It was a very good system. But I says, you can't fine tune it. I says, because you don't do the work. You live with the results, and every time you see the results, you try to change something. But if you let the people help you, okay, and work with you, everything will be fine. And then when, remember I told you about the microfilm, we had a problem there, and we always worked overtime. All right, we had quality issues. The schedule was supposed to be, you were supposed to get the stuff out from 30 days after receipt of order. Well, we were actually exceeding that. And it came down to, long story short, the processors, but we put it under a very tight control of a window. We ran what we call a test strip twice a day. And we found out that if we controlled it right, okay, then everything would come out great. But if it went out of the windows, everything screwed up. So we did that. And I even came back and told, I at that time, again, I was a manager, and I told the supervisors, I'm giving them the authority to shut down the system if the test strip goes out of the window. Well, they wouldn't do it because they feared everything. They just feared everything. So I had to go talk to them and learn from them. What are you doing? What are we going on? And I would dive into them because they knew the issues. I just lived with the results that we couldn't get all this. We had quality issues. We couldn't make the schedule. We're pumping overtime. And working with them and giving them the empowerment to shut down those processors when it went out of the window, to get maintenance over there to fix it. Believe it or not, we wiped out, there was no more backlog, there was no more overtime. And the orders, the only thing when we got orders, I mean, we were turning them over in days. It was just a matter of how quick we can get it through the processors. Okay. So everything went down, but this team was so great. When they had issues, we got them to start talking to me, the leadership, and working the problems out. And they did a phenomenal job. And yet we rewarded them for it too. Like for instance, we needed to go to overtime because there was big orders, okay, that we had to work longer.
Yeah.
We gave them recognition because we would buy pizza for them.
Oh my goodness. You don't even know what you're doing.
It's
Huh?
airway stuff.
Oh,
10
So we gotta
classes.
unmute. I gotta mute somebody who's talking.
okay.
I just gotta see who it is.
Yeah.
Gerard.
Okay.
Done.
So, okay. So, we would reward them. And a matter of fact, they died for overtime because they liked the pizza. So those are some real good, examples of what happened. All right. So we need to think about the turning point. So again, I want you to know the problem really wasn't the process. All right. It was how people were working within it. The process didn't change, but the behavior did. And once I saw that, I started seeing it everywhere. I was one, again, just so you know, from a personality standpoint, I'm a very high D. I am very result orientated. Okay. So as an engineer, I'm always inquisitive. And my brother John will tell you, I used to tear things apart when I was a kid because I really wanted to understand how things worked. Okay. So I always see something and say, well, how can I make it better? How can I improve it? How can I stop the problems? And that was how I did things in the beginning, but things weren't working right. And then when I realized it, and I even taught leadership, I've read so many leadership books, Steve Covey, all these people, and it hit me that as a leader, I get systems are super powerful, but your people are so powerful. If you get them on your side, it's phenomenal. And I don't know if any of you watch sport. I'm a sports nut. I ref football for 18 years, but you can always see when the team believes in their coaching staff because it's a lot different than the teams that don't believe in their coaching staff. So I started seeing it everywhere. Organizations weren't struggling because they didn't know what to do. They were struggling because of the environment was driving the wrong behavior. And it took me a while. It took me years to understand this. Okay, but even to this day, I am a firm believer of the people. Okay, and again, work with them, change your leadership. It's a different question of how instead of like even saying, well, how do we fix this? That's the wrong question. That is still supporting a corrective culture. You need to come back and say, well, how do we stop this from happening again? That's really what you really want. You want to fix it and you want to stop it from happening again. But what you're doing is you're supporting prevention and not correction. Okay. And slowly they pick up on it. Okay. And so that's what sits between the process and the results. It's the people. So if you want different results, we have to change what's driving the behavior, which is the culture, which goes back to leadership. Okay. And again, sometimes, too many times, leaders try to fix the problem instead of teaching them how to fix the problem. Okay. And I've talked to people, in leadership. I got to get out of this. I just prefer to work there. I don't want people problems no more because you're fixing the people problems instead of nurturing them and working with them to make it better tomorrow. Now, you'll say, well, that's a lot of work, and it is a lot of work, but I guarantee you, long term, you'll be much better off. All right. So it's kind of like the shift here. We'll go back in here. Um, oops, went to the wrong. Okay. So again, if you go back in here, so if the issues isn't the processor and it's how people are working, then something has to change. And that change shows up in what we're thinking about leadership. Okay. Most leaders focus on fixing problems. Okay. Not, not from fixing problems to teaching people how to think. And that's what I'm coming back with what I was just telling you a little while ago with leadership. Okay. It's a different tune in here. And this is not an easy fix. You actually have to catch yourself doing this. Okay. Instead of fixing the problem, how are you going to focus and from fixing the problem to teaching people how to think about the problem? Okay. Um, and so a lot of times, you're going to enforce the old thinking is I'm going to enforce compliance. Well, it has to be this way, this way, this way, and everything. I get it. I really do, because there is compliance in a lot of these things, depending on where they go or what you do or what line of industry you are in. Compliance is super, super important. So yes, you got to keep compliance, but you got to start thinking about building trust with people. All right. And the old thinking is we always measure results, okay, instead of reinforcing behaviors. Okay. I always come back with a lot of people, there's one in every company, there's one great report card person. He's called the CFO. I wish they would change his name to the report card guy or woman, okay? Because everything is there for them and they manage by those results. And I know when I wanted to get things in, I always had to prove an ROI to the CFO, okay? But you got to come back from saying to yourself, okay, you have the results. And I'm not saying you don't measure the results. It's a report card for you. But you don't attack the results. You reinforce behaviors to get the right results. And you got to think every time something happens, we react. And rightfully so. I'm not telling you, even as I went through this transition, you're still going to react. But you want to react less and less and show your team, like I said, instead of just reacting to fixing this, and again, do the blame game, okay? Because one of the things I always hear too, I'll shift a little bit, is people blame leadership. Okay. I know somebody that, well, even my brother might laugh. Okay. He's in the medical field. He's a CDI guy. Man, he knows his stuff. He does. I have nothing but praise for the guy with his knowledge. But he's like a, a man with a hammer and a nail. He keeps banging the same nail. Leadership has to change. Well, you're true, but you know what? You're not helping him change. You're trying to do it. And technically, you've never you know everything, but you're from a distance. You're from 5,000 feet up, 10,000 feet up. You're looking at the problem, okay? But if you really want to understand the problem, truthfully understand the problem, talk to the people that's doing the work. It's almost like if you have two departments or silos or departments or something like that, it's like, well, if you're the customer to this person giving you the part, do they know exactly what you want? Okay, you need to start that communications. Okay, so and you're not just looking to solve them for them. You want team empowerment. Give your team some empowerment, to give them some ownership, trust them to make the right decisions, and trust them to get back to you. But again, that doesn't happen overnight. Okay. It's just like a child doesn't all of a sudden get up one day, get off the floor and start running. He has to crawl, take a few steps and fall, stand up and fall, and eventually he gets there. Okay. So the real shift is reinforcing the behavior that drives those results. And most organizations operate in a reaction mode. Okay. But again, you want to move up, but the shift is moving upstream. Go upstream to find out what's going on, what's happening. Okay. And what help them resolve. What I would go back and say to you is actually talk to your people and say, okay, what is your problem? Help me understand. I used to go back and talk to people and I say, well, tell me what you're doing and explain it, because I didn't know everything. Okay. And sometimes, well, we tried this, and this. You can't do this. I said, well, just, what happens if this goes bad? And I said, just amuse me. Tell me. Okay. And eventually it broke down and we started getting a better behavior. But what I'm talking to you about took months to evolve. But once it got there, the shift is phenomenal. But to come back and say we want to attack prevention, I'm telling you right now, your chances of getting prevention in on a correction-based culture is pretty minute. It's happened to me in multiple places. So, I'm just sharing that information. And that's why I kind of like built this whole called what I call, the Zelem shift, the Zelem trilogy of leadership, culture, and prevention. And I actually, as you saw it, I actually built a YouTube channel on it. And I always, at least 3 times a week, I'm putting out a little couple short videos, a long video. I'm posting all the time. So, I think, if you want to, check out the site. Okay. And again, oops, I think I went too far. Yeah. So you can't demand a prevention from a culture built on correction. So when we talk about making this shift, there's one realization that ties all this together. You can't demand prevention from a culture built on correction. You can't tell people to think ahead if they've been trained to react. If they're trained to react, they're not going to do it. So you have to slowly change that. You can't expect ownership if the environment doesn't support it. You can say, I want you to take ownership. But if the environment says, you know what, they're afraid, they're not taking ownership, they're waiting for you, they're watching you, you know what, you can't expect it. And you can't expect people to speak up if they don't feel safe doing it. Okay. And I'm sure some of you, when you even talk to your superiors, it's like I was always taught something, as a leader, and my son's a leader, and I always say you have to manage three ways. You have to manage, for lack of better words, down to your team. Okay. You have to manage laterally to people equal of your level to get their support and help. Okay. Many a times I had to go to, technology to get the right things, but you had to manage it and do that. And you also have to manage your boss. Okay. Because if your boss is constantly hammering correction, you got to figure out how you're going to manage him to turn him over. I mean, simply said, from one person that told me, say to a manager I know, and he said, "Well, how come you can always come out here and give us an attaboy, this that we're doing a great job, but the people above won't? Do you know how important it is that the people above that come out and talk to you?" And one of the places I used to go about once every 2 weeks, actually, the president would come out and talk to people. And that had a big success with them. Okay. So prevention isn't commanded. You just can't command prevention. You have to create it. So, lastly, don't rebuild the house until you reinforce the foundation. Okay. And if you take nothing else away from today, I just want you to remember that. Don't rebuild the house until you reinforce the foundation. Most organizations focus on rebuilding new processes, new systems, new tools, and they're good. I'm not telling you not to focus on it, but that shouldn't be your only focus because if the foundation hasn't changed, and again, that has to do with your people, and the foundation is leadership, and the culture is created, and until the foundation is reinforced, you're not really going to make a lot of changes because fixing the structure isn't enough if the foundation is weak. So that's kind of like, well, I think I had an hour, but you know what? I saved you 15 minutes. So uh,
Love
I
it.
really
Love
want to
it.
thank you. I really want to thank you for taking the time to, listen to me. And I will take any questions and,
Yeah,
get,
Q&A. Let's do it. Let's do it.
yeah.
By the way, just so everybody knows, I did put in the link to the survey and the CEU certificate and a pile of other links, including past presentations where the recording and the PowerPoint's going to go as a PDF, upcoming calendar, classes, NESCON, Olivia's podcast link. Be sure to copy all those links now because once you close out of the meeting, guys, you won't see it anymore. So do it now. And now we'll go for Q&A. Any questions and answers? This is free consulting from the Zelem Master.
Jim,
Yeah, good.
Larry here. Um, if I'm been, one of the reasons why I retired, I'm not going to get into the details. We had a leader who was not what you profess to be, somebody who's thinking into how you manage people, and drove everybody crazy. Always looking for the bottom line, never looking for what you're talking about. How are we going to move things ahead? How to focus on how to solve problems. Just give me the bottom line. And all that ever did was force people to say, like in that Led Zeppelin song, it's time for me to go.
Well, Larry, I will say this. Okay. I know somebody, okay, that is pretty much in the same situation that you said. And this person got thrown on. Matter of fact, I'll tell you, it was my son where he worked. Okay. And something happened while he was not at work. Okay. And the stuff didn't get out. And his superior gave him hell. And he said that, you know, then the guy comes back out on the floor. He wants the blame game. And he said, I wasn't even here with what you're talking about. He says, well, then give me somebody else to throw under the bus. Okay. And so, what do you do with that? But yet, on the same token, I will say this, his team really likes him. Okay. He's the one that I was telling you about that people will come up and say to him, you really, give us kudos. You help us. You do all this. Why don't your superiors do it? So now I'm coaching my son, and I says, well, let's look at how you manage upwards because you're going to have to challenge him just as much as he's challenging you. And I won't go into that, but it
Yeah.
will work. Okay, so Larry, I get what you're saying. I do.
Oh.
Okay, but just because, for lack of better words, your boss is an idiot doesn't mean you have to be an idiot to your team.
I
Correct?
agree. Always stand stalwart and do your job the way you're supposed to do it. Stay in line and try not to falter. And then you're not getting the support from up to your immediate management. I'm just hoping the upper management recognizes, and the upper management looks down and says, "Uh-oh, what do we do?"
All right.
And then everything just continual spirals.
Yeah.
Oh
But
well.
yeah, it took me a while. It took me a while to figure out how to where I worked was to manage upwards. I did. But then I started playing their game and I started giving them the stuff that they wanted. And there is only one way to talk to a CFO: money. If you can't bring up money, you're going to do nothing. Okay. And I used to throw that in his face. Okay. And I'd go there and I would give him the ROI, and after a while, he started trusting me and we started, it started working. Okay. So again, it's really trial and error. Okay. Depending on what level you're at. I mean, I had a guy, the story I told you about the Honda clock? Well, my boss, okay, he spent 17 hours interviewing me to be, he wanted to make sure I was team focused, okay? He even had me go see a psychiatrist. I'm going, what the heck am I seeing? Like, I got to put these ink spots. I said, what are you even looking for? Well, he wanted to see if I saw a gun. Really? Okay. But anyway, so when that happened, because I was the business unit manager, the engineer that did everything reported to my boss. And he went to my boss. And the next thing you know, after we did this, all of a sudden I got called into my boss. And he started giving me crap all over the place. I said to him, John, let me ask you a question. I says, you hired me for a team, right? I says, right now, I gave you the quality that you're looking for. I beat your schedule. And I got a team of people here ecstatic about it, wanting to help build it better. So can you really tell me what I did wrong, except I hurt the feelings of an industrial engineer? Okay. And he should have known better. Talk to the people because they're going to fine tune it for you. But I did get in trouble for that.
Oh.
But I came back and told him because, like you said, you did all this, and yet I gave you everything you want, and yet you're mad because I hurt the feelings of an industrial engineer. So,
well, Jim, a couple things. Number one, I did laugh on cue, even though I was silent when you said I would laugh because I knew exactly the situation you were talking.
You knew what nail I was going to hit?
Yeah, I mean, to him, every nail, I mean, everything that he deals with is a nail, but he's the hammer.
Yeah.
Number two, two principles that I've always followed. You mentioned to Larry that his boss was an idiot. Two principles that I've learned is number one, never argue with an idiot because they will beat you with their experience. And the second part of that is, and never argue with an idiot in public because the public really doesn't know which one is the idiot. And then I totally, I agree with all that you presented today. And I have my own acronym. Well, it's not really an acronym, but my own philosophy that gives it just a similarity to what you preach, and that is what I call the ADI concept. The first one is awareness, the second one is discipline, and the third one is implementation. And I think it just complements what you talked about today.
Well, thanks, John.
That was very good. I enjoyed your whole presentation.
So, Jim, a question for you.
Yeah.
With what you presented, it seems to be mostly management driven. At what point did they make the journey to be employee employee owned. Like they want to be part of that process. It's no longer driven by management. The employees are driving it.
Well, the employee, yeah, you have to get the employees to drive it. They're not going
Hmm.
to drive anything. Like I told you, it's a journey.
Right.
And it's up to, when I'm coming back, yeah, a lot of this is management driven, but it's really not management driven to the point of I don't think you need to be a manager, a director, or anything above. Okay. I actually think you can be an outsider, okay,
Okay.
in an area building the people. I do. Okay. You need to come back and, you don't, I have a big problem with leadership. Okay. I have a sign that I don't have up here right now, but I built it. Okay. Put the leader in leadership. Okay. Leadership is strictly a position. Okay. And you don't have to be in a leadership role to be a leader. How many people do you know that goes to an individual when they have an issue? And they don't go to the leadership. They do not go to the position. So you can slowly do that.
Hmm.
Okay. And actually, you can help them take some of the ownership, but they have to have trust. If you can't build trust, you're in trouble. So yeah, I point a lot to leaderships in all my videos and everything like that, but I'm not just talking about them. I'm talking about anyone. And a matter of fact, one of the videos that are coming out is, you know, it's kind of like, don't blame leadership, okay? Because there are how many people are an engineer or they get out of college, okay, and all of a sudden they got this degree and they see something, and all of a sudden, you know what? You have to, I can see it and fix it. But you know what the most important thing is, Kent? They did not talk to the people that do the work. Okay. So even if you're, for lack of better words, I don't even know if they exist anymore. I'm aging myself. We had group leaders at times. Okay. And even a group leader can build the trust. Okay. I used to know times when I let people do, how many times, like when you need something, you'll go talk to this person versus this person. Okay. Because of the personality. But you need to change that a little bit and help the other people understand it. Because I always even come back and say, if you're rich with money, you have multiple houses in the country, okay, or even out of the country. But I always tell everybody people don't like cross training, right? But if you're rich with knowledge, you can do any job. And why would a company want to get rid of you? Okay.
Thank you.
And that's some of the times I would talk to people with that. But I will say this to you, okay? It doesn't matter what you think you said. It doesn't. It matters what they heard you say and how
Mm.
they interpreted it. So if you want to help somebody, and I've learned this kind of like the hard way a couple times, is when I ask them, well, what do you think I said? Okay. And because they didn't come back and do what I had asked them to do, an assignment, and I didn't get mad. I said, okay. I said, can you just tell me what you think, what the assignment was? And he almost repeated me exactly to what I said, but he took it another way. And I said, well, damn, I'm the one that didn't know that. So how can I blame him when he did exactly what he thought I said?
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thanks for clarifying.
Okay.
So years ago, somebody told me perception is 9/10 of reality to the customer. So
Yeah.
it doesn't
Yeah.
matter exactly what you said. Doesn't matter what you said. It's how they perceived it.
Exactly. And on the same token, you have to understand something. We all have our own paradigms. Okay. And Stevie Covey explained this very good in one of his books. We all have our same paradigms. If you remember the Steve Covey book, he showed an old hag and a beautiful young woman. Okay. And I did this when I taught leadership class in actually, well, I forget the town, but North Haven, I think it was. And so what I would do is I would take half the class, I would give him the young lady, And I would take the other class and give them a picture of the hag. And I said, just look at this picture for a minute. Okay. And then what I would do is I would project the combo picture on the screen. And I said, what do you see? And 90% of the young woman, they saw the young woman, and 90% of the other ones, they saw the old hag. And they were both talking to each other. Well, how do you see this? How do you see that? They had to explain it to them. So, I mean, you have to understand when you talk to people, you have to understand what their paradigm is. I don't care what your paradigm is as a leader. You have to understand them to help them. And too
Fascinating.
many people, and I get the biggest kick, and I'm probably going off on a tangent here. Too many people get promoted into a leadership role, not having the foggiest notion of what leadership is. They got promoted because they did their job good. So they got moved up. Well, you can't do your job good because now you have to do the job good for all the people. So you have to help those people get there. So that's why a lot of times I come back, I have a book out there about putting the leader in leadership. And it's a lot for people just getting into that position.
Hmm. There is a question in the comments. I don't know. This says, is the culture challenge a motivator to go lights out entirely with robot workers, or at least in some industries?
Well, there's nothing. You can have culture with robot workers. I mean, that's the culture you're building. Okay. If you have repetitive work, I'm not against robots. I mean, I'm not. I'm going back in here if there is a non-thinking position or if it's a go, no go for a robot, where you can look at it, by all means do it. But if it has to, if it takes understanding, well, now you have people and you can't treat people like a robot. So the culture can be there. You have robots. If your culture is robots, it's good. That's the culture, okay, of robots. But on the same token, what about the things that aren't robotic in your line? I mean, look how much they automated the car, okay? All these robots, okay? But there's still people working there. Okay? So you have to listen to them because again, I'm a firm believer nobody knows the job better than the people doing it. They might not have the best answers, but you know what? You might have the education, but you can lead them down the path. That's that is what I've learned over time. I've learned that I made a lot of changes in a lot of the businesses I was in. But once I started understanding people and started trusting them and getting them to trust with me, I saw a flip. Things really started improving better. And I kind of like almost worked myself out of a job. Okay.
That's great. All right, let's see. Somebody asked for Larry Spinello's email address. That's in there. I just put it in the chat window, so grab it. And, you can get your ASQ certificate there. Let's see, what else do we have?
Hey, I had a
This is a great presentation topic. It said, all right, sorry, go ahead.
Well, if you want to too, I'm just telling you, if you want more videos, hear me talking or anything like that, you know what? Check out, it's a YouTube channel. It's at the Zelem Shift. So maybe you can put that in there in the chat too.
At the Zelem what?
At the Zelem Shift.
Shift.
Okay. I mean, like I said, I got about 65 videos out there right now, and I keep putting out a couple, 2 to 3 a week. So, and I'm having fun doing it. I'm retired now.
There you go.
I'm trying to share the information, and anybody out there that listens to this presentation, I mean, if you want to talk, you want to email me, by all means, email me. I'm not looking to charge for a consultant or anything. I am just trying to help people.
There is a comment here that says, Steve Jobs found at Apple, the best managers are the engineers who do not want to be managers because they know how to get work done well. Jobs hired professional managers who turned out to be disasters. That's from Jack. So interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And want to know something? what I get the biggest kick out of is I've watched some people, I've watched some presidents hire a great team and they were good. And they wouldn't listen to the team. So why did you hire them then? You could have done everything yourself. And then I know somebody else, a president that hired a great executive team, and she was never around anymore because they ran the company for her.
Wow.
Okay. So I do I always tell everybody, I've even told some supervisors and managers, I says, work yourself out of a job. Well, then what am I going to do? I says the company would be a fool to get rid of a person like that.
Yep.
They just
I'm going to
would.
stop recording just in case anyone has any shy, if they're shy or questions. I think this will work. I think it recorded. You guys heard it say recorded started. So let's try this right here. Stop recording. There we
I
go.
had a quick one, Ken.
Okay. And do you want me to keep the recording going or kill it?
It doesn't matter.
All right. Let me kill it.